Diana Cox-Foster, who, let's see here, is the research leader at the USDA Bee Lab once again. And before serving here in her current role, she was the research leader at Penn State University. Her research focuses on biotic and abiotic stressors on bee health, and quickly becoming a friend of the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food and a friend of the bees. I welcome Diana Cox-Foster.
So it's my pleasure to join back at the conference here. So I thank Stephen and everyone for inviting me for the second year here in a row. And as you learned, I got to join the Utah, the Pollinating Insect Research Lab, or PIRU, as we call it, the short form, about 2 years ago. So just to give you a little bit of my history, I grew up in Colorado, so I am a Westerner. I come from a long lineage of pioneer families. Actually did kindergarten down in Monticello, so a little bit of Utah early on. But I was a professor at Penn State University for 28 years and got caught up in honeybees and colony collapse disorder. So I was the co-leader of the research done way back then. But I had the pleasure of joining an excellent team of scientists out here, wherever Jamie disappeared to, there he is, as others here that I'll refer to. So, as Jamie gave you a great introduction here, I'll give you a little bit more here. So we have incredible bee diversity globally. There's about 20,000 species at least, probably many more out there, and 4,000 plus in North America. And as Jamie showed you, we're right in the hot spot of diversity here. And for those of you who have been in bees for quite a while, you know that they were actually introduced species into the United States, that the colonists brought them here originally. And we've taken them as human beings, we've taken them globally around the world. There are walking, flying, movable insect livestock, and very ideally suited for pollination, where you have large acreages of crops blooming and not much else around, and you need to get bees in there to do pollination. You can bring in your honeybees and have them work very efficiently. We've also made use of them over way back before Christ in Israel. You can find the oldest apiary that's about 5,000 BC, where they had over 200 colonies right in the med center of their village. So when you have cities that complain about beekeeping, we need to remind them that we had them way back then. That's primarily for our sugar production. Our honey was it, and still, honey is still highly treasured worldwide. As such, honeybees, but also these other bees, are the keystones in our food supply and environments. But what do I mean about that? So if you look at an archway, especially like Roman archways, you'll see this little triangular stone that's placed at the very top there. That's called the keystone. And Jamie, growing up in Pennsylvania, knew it's called the Keystone State. If you have that stone in place, it holds the arch up there and it keeps it stabilized. If you pull that stone out, the whole archway collapses. So these bees are actually one of the species that supports a lot of our food supply. If we didn't have honeybees and many of the other bees, we would all be eating grain and corn and potatoes and being totally bored and missing many of the essential nutrients and vitamins that we need. Out in the natural environment, there's over 80% of the plants out there that depend upon these bees as pollinators. So having them and keeping their populations healthy is very important. I also need to point out that up in Logan, one of the saving graces that we have there is that we're the only ARS lab that gets to work on all the bees. And we're the home of the U.S. pollinating insect collection. So I have 2 systematists in place helping to identify and figure out who are all the bees that we have. And we also are now getting into doing molecular keys for those. And we can also use it to figure out who are invasive bees that are coming in that like the potential for Apis cerana or Apis dorsata or many other bees coming in to displace others. So hopefully you'll get to hear some of my other scientists talk about the diversity here. There's brand new bees also popping up all the time, new species. We have discovered in the last year or so that there's a bee that makes its home in sandstone. It actually digs and nests in sandstone. So it's really cool. But I'm going to tell you about health of bees. So as you may have heard and know, honeybees have been in trouble for a while. It was 2006, 2007 when the first beekeeper said there's something really funky going on here. I'm losing a whole apiary that was previously 2 weeks ago really healthy and happy. We came up with the title name colony collapse disorder because we didn't know what this was. We couldn't recognize it. Those losses have continued on. So you can see over on the left-hand side, at that time it was about 30% annual loss during the winter time. And some beekeepers experienced even higher losses of 80 to 90%. And as one of my previous students, Dennis Van Ingelstorp, has gone on to create his own illustrious career. He's the person who manages the Bee Informed Partnership. That's a site that you guys can go and look on the web, and it has some great bee information there about diseases and just blogging and that. They partnered with APHIS to do the National Bee Survey and send out these surveys nationwide. And what we've seen is that it's not only winter loss. A lot of the commercial beekeepers and many other sideliners said, wait a minute, you're ignoring something. We used to have all these healthy bees in the summertime and be building up our colonies and splitting them. We're starting to see that we're losing colonies in the summer. So you'll see that there's this total annual loss bars here, the darker orange color, that was added in. All of a sudden it became clear that many of these beekeepers across the country were losing 50% of their colonies. And these were from well-established commercial beekeepers that had this long lineage of very successful operations. They knew what they were doing, had handled a lot of things, and we're seeing this. So things have gotten a little bit better here with the winter loss, but we're still seeing these high levels. It's not just honeybees, too. So Jamie talked about some of the declines here. But just to remind you, this year for the first time, up at the top left-hand corner, we've had a bee, the first bumblebee, added to the endangered species list. So the rusty patch bumblebee is our poster child for that. And it used to be one of these very predominantly distributed bees. And Jamie would tell you the exact distribution. I think they're mainly now found up in Minnesota and Wisconsin, the last remnants, but they used to be down through over into Virginia and that, I think, as well.